Thanks for tuning in to the OFN today. It's the premiere on 2020. We're already into July. We can't wait to get into August. No preseason, it looks like, this year, Mark, but that's okay. As long as we get into training camp within the next few weeks, we're hearing the rookies might report in a week or two. Anything is possible. We could get delays, but we're going to keep our fingers crossed. Positive vibes.
Always the glass is half full, Greg. No question about that. And, I think what we could realistically expect in the National Football League this season is for it to begin. I don't know if it will go uninterrupted or not, remains to be seen. But at least I have a good feeling we'll be watching the NFL on Sundays this fall.
Yeah, I was a little bit, I don't know, excited. I shouldn't say that. Anytime the CDC or any of those organizations say anything, I always wonder when they're going to change their mind or flip the other way a couple days later. But the report that the CDC might be coming out and what is it? They might be updating the term of the virus because of the limited amount of deaths across the country. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the term is. It's not pandemic because that's a global term, but the national term, they might decide to change that. And if they do, then that would be that would be huge just because of the optics of changing that. I think would be very important, and I certainly hope that does happen. But again, like I said, the CDC can change their mind at any minute.
Yeah, they could, and like you say, for the optics, it would be good. If it was a strain of influenza of some kind, it was referred to as some kind of a flu. I think people, might feel a little bit more relaxed and a little bit less concerned. The question then would be, how are they going to handle cases, as they come in? You hear talk about from young kids about not being afraid of it, and we're all going to die at some point, but you can prevent your death, and
Well, it
that's
sounds like
basically.
us when we were young.
Yes, it does.
So,
Exactly
you
right.
know,
Right. Right.
that's the way you are
So
when you're young. You think you're going to live forever.
there's no question about that. I mean, I can remember back when I was thinking, my goodness, when I'm 50 years old, the year 2000 is going to be here. And my God, that's going to be forever.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be like Back to the Future. We'll be driving our cars in the skies above us.
like the Jetsons,
Yeah,
right?
like the
Exactly.
Jetsons. And of course,
Right.
anytime you believe that crap.
Yes.
So,
But we bought into it when we were young. The young
yeah.
people are buying into it now, and like you say, hopefully we can harness this thing and make it positive, and
Yeah.
work out for the best. And for the best for you and I, obviously, would be a football season
Yes.
for 2020, right?
Absolutely. By the way, a couple of promos here. We've got not only the Ourlads draft review guide out. Here it is, the Ourlads draft review guide out. It's at ourlads.com, of course. And I was responsible for 11 teams, including, of course, my team, the New York Jets. And then here is Mark's playbook.com football preview guide right here. This just arrived in my mailbox a few days ago, and it's available now in which stores nationwide, Mark?
Well, we're on sale at newsstands nationwide now, Greg, at all Barnes and Nobles and Books a Million stores and isolated newsstands around the country. In Las Vegas at the Gamblers Book Club, they just sell a ton of those. They sold out last year. So Barnes and Noble, Books a Millions are your best bets to get that. And if you can't, you can always buy a copy direct from us at playbook.com.
And by the way, nice, you got Patrick Mahomes, the $500 million man on the cover.
Yeah, I wish we'd have known that. We could have used that as a around his picture, surrounding picture. But nonetheless, good for Patrick Mahomes, and he is obviously the marquee player in the National Football League these days, and I would say deservedly so.
Okay, now this is the AFC East on the show this week. We have 7 more to go, so we'll be getting to the AFC West in a few weeks, but we'll cover one division a week. Basically, we're just going to talk a little bit about the key changes from last year's team to this year's teams. We'll take a look at the division odds, the conference odds, and the Super Bowl odds, and let you know whether or not we believe that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that you should be keeping an eye on regarding wagering for either division, conference, or Super Bowl And then once we're done in about 8 weeks, that's going to be right around the time, or maybe a week or two, hopefully, if everything stays the same before the season begins. And we'll have our 2020 preview show. And that's when we'll give all of our picks. And of course, we need that time because even though there may not be any preseason games, practice, you could still have injuries. There can still be some key players. I mean, you have a couple of key guys that are still available. Clowney is the biggest name that's still available on the market. We have no idea what's going to happen to Jamal Adams, even though I believe he's not going anywhere. We just had Cam Newton sign. So there's still the possibility of enough impact moves that by time we get till the eve of the 2020 season, we could have a different perspective on exactly which way to go. And the odds can change just a little bit.
Yeah, they can do that. You can also throw into the mix, Greg, what happens with the COVID-19 along the way,
Yes.
too, as well. Because right now, if the season were to begin next week, everybody would, as far as looking at the games and handicapping them, people would be scurrying and looking at the injury list to find out who's in and who's out, who's been tested and who hasn't. So I think that'll end up being a big factor in the equation as well.
Now, if it was today, let's say the games were this weekend, how would you handicap, or would you handicap any differently considering, or would it be one of those situations where, of course, we're going to handicap and we're going to trust our trends and our stats. And again, you got so many of them in the guide. It's incredible. But we're going to trust that until or if we notice something different over a course of a couple of weeks that might indicate, you know what, this is a different year because of the pandemic, and maybe our odds or trends might have to be changed a little bit. And here's a little bit of advice that we can give you because of that.
Well, that's a great question. And I will say this first and foremost, I won't jump into the water on trends alone. And very rarely do I do it on trends alone, especially right out of the gate, because teams change their complexion and their personality with personnel changes in the offseason, free agency, retirements, trades, so forth and whatnot, which affects the outlook of a football team. Secondly, when I'm looking at handicapping games early on in the season, I'm going right to the coaches, first of all, in my coaches database to see what coaches' habits happen to be early on in a football season, how some coaches approach football games in week 1, week 2, in the opening month of September. Then I'll go to the quarterbacks and see what their approach is in those particular games. Also, looking at the Playbook Preview Guide magazine, I'll study what they did statistically last year. Did the team improve or regress? I'll take a look at that. I have the stat logs to see that within the guide magazine to help me along that way. And then lastly, which I lean on most heavily, is my database. And my database will tell me what I can expect from teams in certain situations. When I'm saying situations, I'm talking about what can I expect from a team that won 13 or more games last year to do early on in the football season the next year. Chances are better than not these teams are being priced accordingly by Las Vegas because of their popularity. So you might not want to be chasing teams like that, especially if they've had personnel changes. So as you can see, the recipe in handicapping football games early includes a lot of different ingredients here. But I'm a taste tester early on, Greg. I'm not going to be jumping into the water or eating the whole pie early on. I'm going to see exactly what we've got. And one final thought is that we don't have preseason to fall back in on to find out how the teams performed in preseason, what their tendencies were. And there's also a lot of good handicapping situations depending upon results from the preseason. So that's no longer in the fray. So I think the bottom line here is that when approaching the first week of the NFL football season, I'll do it very, very cautiously.
Yeah, and I also think it's going to be maybe more important than ever to take a look at teams, or maybe side with teams early on, who will be bringing back a majority of their coaching staff and key personnel. Because with the lack of practice, camps, and so forth, preseason games, you can't really look at the new players, even the rookies, can't expect them to contribute as much as you want them to early on, especially the young coaches. I mean, when we get to talk about, say, the New York Giants, when we talk NFC East, That's going to be a heck of a job for a rookie head coach to take on a team, or any head coach in a new situation, but especially a rookie head coach. You would think it's going to take a while before they can kind of get into a rhythm.
Unquestionably, we're not going to see that so much in the AFC East, which we're
No.
going to talk about today. But, there are other new head coaches in the NFL. And while they generally have to introduce their playbook, integrate that with the players that they have on hand, the personnel, it takes a little bit of time. It takes training camp to begin to do that. They're not going to have that luxury this year. They're not going to have preseason to introduce that as well. The players that they drafted in the NFL football draft aren't going to have the cohesion that they would have wanted or had in years past. So that's going to be a very, very precarious situation. And that's one thing that I would look at as far as handicapping NFL games and coach. I would not looking to be in a hurry to back these new coaches that are implementing new playbooks and new
Yep.
schemes. I'd let that take place for a while and see how they get out of the month of September and see just about what's happening with that team and what they're all about.
And even though the Patriots aren't going to have a new coaching staff as we begin with the top team in this division, the fact is that Cam Newton is now on board, and you would believe, barring an injury, that he's going to end up the starter week 1. And that means there's going to be a difference of the playbook offensively. It's going to be a little bit different. It has to be, because Cam Newton could do things that Tom Brady could never do. And that's going to open up the playbook and change the playbook a little bit more for Josh McDaniels. And he's going to have different types of plays for Cam Newton. So that will be, and even just besides that, Cam Newton coming on board, first time he's with a new team, that will also take a little bit of time to get used to the surroundings. And let's not forget, the Patriots historically have had slow Septembers, or week 1, they'll get blown out every couple of years. They don't look very good early on sometimes, and then all of a sudden they get into a rhythm. So Patriots might be a very difficult team to figure out early. And if they wind up 1-1 or 1-2, I wouldn't panic.
I wouldn't either. And in fact, I look for this team to get off a little bit sluggish, if you will, because of those factors you just mentioned. Cam Newton himself is going to have a lot of rust to shake off. It's been a long while between drinks of water and starts for him in the National Football League. And in fact, the last 8 games he started as a quarterback, they lost all 8 football games.
Yeah, wow.
Now, I know a lot of that. Yeah, a lot of that had to do with some injuries that he was incurring at the particular time, but he was not fluid at the time that he checked out. So these things are going to have to come around in New England's favor to be able to jump on them with any kind of confidence at all early on in the football season.
Well, let's see. The Patriots are now, I don't know, were the Patriots the favorite before Cam Newton came over?
No, they were not. In fact, this was going to be the first time in a long while that they in this division. The Buffalo Bills were the slight favorite, the ever so slight favorite, because of the Tom Brady situation. But that reversed itself when the signing of Cam Newton happened. Now they're not an overwhelming favorite, to say the least. In fact, if you bet them right now, you get +1 to win the division, whereas Buffalo you get +145. Before the season began out of Las Vegas, Buffalo was +110, New England was +1. The odds have changed accordingly with Cam Newton coming along that maybe aid to the picture. They look like prospects look a little bit better with Cam Newton than they would have perhaps with Jarrett Stidham or even Brian Hoyer at the quarterback spot. But, it's only twice that this New England football team has failed to win a division under Bill Belichick. That was in 2002 and 2008. So there's a lot of history here with New England, but a lot of that history with Belichick has been with Tom Brady.
Yeah, matter of fact, I think because of that, Patriots right now +110 to win the division, 6-1 to win the conference, 12-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'm definitely, if I have confidence, and I do, that as long as Cam Newton is healthy this year, that the Patriots are going to be a very dangerous playoff team. That I'm waiting, because I'm going to gamble that they are definitely, their odds are going to end up going up once we hit October. Once we hit October, after the first 3 or 4 games of the season, let's say, I think the odds will be better. So maybe right now they're 12-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'd say they might be 15, 16, 17 to 1 to win the Super Bowl if they do struggle a little bit after their first few games. I'm willing to take the chance, be patient, and throw a little bit of money after the first 3 or 4 games on the Patriots instead of doing it in the preseason.
There's two ways to look at this situation with them, Greg. One is there's value on New England compared to what they were in the past. Okay, plus 110 to win the division. They've been favored as much as minus 300 or 400 in the past. Overwhelming favorites. They're not that this particular year. So the question is this the year that we get in and buy low? That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the public. The public is going to want to be on New England like white on rice this football season here with Cam Newton at quarterback. It wouldn't have been the case had he not signed. I think they would have been a little bit more apprehensive, but now suddenly they feel that perhaps Cam Newton can do more for this football team than Tom Brady did in his later winding down years,
Absolutely.
specifically last year. I mean, he couldn't throw the ball downfield. He can't run. He can't scramble. These are all things that Cam Newton can do. So it's going to end up making this football team better in that sense. But again, it's all about value when it comes to wagering. And if the public is going to be on this team, draped all over them, I'm going to back off. If they're not, if they're a little bit shy, if New England gets out of the gate in a slow fashion, just imagine they go 1-3 in their first 4 football games, and nobody wants any piece of them. That's when we're going to start looking at them for a couple of reasons. Number one, Bill Belichick is not accustomed to losing. He won't stand for it, and the football team will turn things around. But if they open up 4-0 to begin the football season here, then they're going to be praised like Tom Brady was the quarterback in his heyday. So it's all going to be a pulse. You got to get a pulse in this football team. Like a doctor, you go and the nurse checks your pulse, your blood pressure. The same thing with New England. Check their blood pressure at the time you go to play them.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it's a gamble. But I do feel confident that a healthy Cam Newton makes this Patriot team a nice sleeper. If you can, and I'm just taking odds, 12 to 1 sleeper to win the Super Bowl. But I'm going to gamble that they are going to get off to a slow start. Now, maybe it'd be wise to probably put just a little bit of my investment if I feel confident this is a Super Bowl caliber team with a healthy Cam Newton. Maybe put a little bit just in case they do start 4-0 and those odds go from 12 to 1 to 6 to 1 within 3 or 4 games. But I'll save the majority of my money and gamble that they'll get off to a slow start, and those odds will either stay at 12 to 1 or hopefully, of course, go up to 15 to 1 or higher.
Well, Greg, all they have to do is make the playoffs.
That's it.
That one of 2 ways they can do it. One of 3 ways they could do it. They can win the division, or they can qualify as a wild card team. Either of those 2 ways. But if they do, if that door cracks open here, then you've got Bill Belichick in a desired underdog role in the playoffs. So the bottom line here, while I'm crying against maybe fading New England, not following the path of the public here, I would buy them like you are doing here in a Super Bowl wager, only based on the possibility of the fact that they do make the playoffs out of a relatively weak division here in the AFC East. There's nothing that's improved. There's no monster inside this division residing here that they have to beat. And if they do make the playoffs, that door is open, and it's Bill Belichick time.
Yeah, and if you take a look at what they added overall personnel-wise, they added a few young players on defense to get excited about. They added the linebackers from Michigan and Alabama. They added that safety, Duger. That'll help out. So, they've got some, and they already have an excellent defense. Offensively, they've got the 2 tight ends, the 2 rookies. Maybe Damien Harris will play a little bit better in year 2, the running back. They really need Nikhil Harry to break out. It's not impossible to see that could happen. Rookies tend to get off to a slow start, especially at the wide receiver position, because if Nikhil Harry doesn't give them a downfield presence or some sort of a young playmaking presence, then all of a sudden they become a lot less dangerous, and then they rely a lot more on Cam Newton and the running game.
Yeah, unquestionably. And I think the key to what you mentioned was Nikhil Harry, first round draft pick. He's got to pick his game up here, and I believe he will. with a little bit of added experience that he does have. You look at the draft, and if there's a player in the draft, I think that could help this football team. It might be Zach Moss, the running back out of Utah. Not very big, but very, very powerful. And he could end up being really helpful out of the backfield as a target with Cam Newton in that backfield
Oh,
there.
he's with the
And,
Bills, Zach Moss.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was
I'm sorry.
talking about Damien Harris before, the other third
Okay.
round pick from 2019 when I mentioned him, because Damien
Okay.
Harris, we've seen running backs with the Patriots before, and Harry too at wide receiver, the skill position players, they tend to take a while to get going, and because Belichick and they're always a championship level team, they're not going to throw these young kids out there if they're not ready. They're not going to let them play through mistakes. So that's why Harry at receiver and Damien Harris at running back, two guys to keep an eye on.
I think so. I agree with that completely. And in flipping around on the draft situation for New England, I was a little bit perplexed that they didn't go after a quarterback. Now, I know things worked out in the Cam Newton factor and signing him as a free agent here, but what if he had been gone?
Yeah.
Suddenly, this football team, you would have to wonder what chance do they even have? Are they going to go with Jarrett Stidham? Is Brian Hoyer going to get a chance, and does it even matter? So the bottom line here is, I was a little bit shocked at what they rounded up in their draft here. I thought it was a rather poor draft for Bill Belichick, but that's not for me to make the decision because Bill Belichick has really made the most out of what it is that he's gotten before in the past. So I don't think he's going to rely so much on the draft here this year as he is those players we talked about.
Yeah, and no, I just get. I mean, I agree with you because there was no way on earth that I felt Stidham and Hoyer were going to be sitting there battling for the number one quarterback job during training camp. I couldn't believe that. So did Cam Newton fall on their laps? I don't know. You tend to think they know what they're doing. And I just can't believe that they just picked up the phone one day, a month after the draft, and hey, is Cam Newton available? I mean, they had to have had discussions a lot earlier than we were being led to believe. And otherwise, like you said, what else could they have done? Jameis Winston?
No.
I don't even know what they could have done because there's just no way in my mind that unless Stidham is better than I think, that they would have went into the season with Jarrett Stidham as their number one quarterback.
I think he was targeted to be that number one quarterback for this football team. And nice little stat in the playbook yearbook guide this year is the last time that the New England Patriots did not have Tom Brady as their starting quarterback, they won 11 games that year, and that was with Matt Castle as the quarterback. So, can Cam Newton match those numbers this year? Probably.
Sure. Yeah.
Probably, right. And if he can do just that, the door opens for the playoffs.
All right, the Bills. Now talk about bringing back everybody. The entire offensive line and depth returns. They all for that position. Not only that position, but and that's important too because let's remember last year they had basically an entire new offensive line. So all the guys are back there, and 20 of 22 starters return. They make the deal for Diggs, which is a huge deal. And really, that's basically it's Lorenzo Alexander gone and Stephon Diggs in. Everybody else is back, even the coaching staff, the front office. I mean, I'm not sure there's a team in the NFL that is more prepared to get off to a good start than the Buffalo Bills.
I agree with you. I mean, everything you mentioned, you can't knock. They're looking forward probably to the start of the season more than any team in the AFC, especially with Tom Brady now residing in the NFC. But the bottom line here to me is still the Buffalo Bills. And yes, they won 10 football games last year, and they bring a ton of returning experience and talent back to the program here this year. It's all going to ride on Josh Allen. Can Josh Allen continue to improve? He showed that market improvement last year, not so much the year before. So can he improve off of that? That's going to be the question with this football team here. But it's that old adage, the Peter principle. Can they rise to the level of winning this division? Are they capable of doing something just like that? That remains to be seen. And, they're going to open up with 2 division games to open the season here, at home against the Jets and then at Miami. If they can get out to a 2-0 start And they will be favored to do just that. They'll be favored in those first two football games. The key game then will be when they host the LA Rams, who are going to be under the radar type football team this year that nobody's going to like. But Sean McVay will have a big chip on his shoulder when he goes to Buffalo.
You know, what's going to be interesting, of course, is following everything, not only regarding player safety and all of that, but the fans. And as of today, and it could change if everything starts to go better and CDC says, hey, this is good and that's good and optics are nice, and all of a sudden governors are loosening up the grips, maybe the Buffalo Bills will be able to open the gates. And as the NFL has at this point said they're going to allow at least 50% of the fans to attend games. If the every state, of course, is different, but as of today, if the Buffalo Bills were playing, there wouldn't be any fans in the stadium, and that could be a big disadvantage for Buffalo and an advantage for any team, say like the Jets, that would come in there early, because they wouldn't have to worry about the Bills fans, and that's a very good home field advantage. And it's like playing on a neutral field if the fans aren't going to be there.
Yeah, it really is. They'll miss that tremendously. Will Buffalo without fans in the stands? And we're hoping that along the way, at some point, maybe there might not be fans in the stands to start the season, but by midseason we might see 25% of the fans in the stands. By season's end, maybe 50%. So any little bit is going to help this football team. My main concern about Buffalo this year is they had a nice season last year. They won 10 football games. But it's very rare you'll find a team in the NFL to win 10 games that averages less than 20 points per game. Like I mentioned, Josh Allen had a pretty good improved football season last year. He didn't light things up last year. This was a Buffalo football team last year that relied a lot on its defense. They've had two really strong successive defensive football seasons here, and that defense is going to have to remain intact for Buffalo, but they're going to have to ignite this offense a little bit more this year.
Well, you mentioned Moss before. That's a really good 1-2 combination with Devin Singletary, last year's third-round draft pick, Moss this year's third-round draft pick. So they want to run the football. They're going to run the football again. Like I said, the offensive line comes back completely intact. That always helps, especially along the line. You have to be cohesive with everybody, understand your blocking assignments. Now you have the big home run hitter in Stephon Diggs. And like you said, that's why we're going to see if Josh Allen can take that next step, because he's going to have better players and another year in the NFL with everybody returning. I'm not a big Brian Daboll fan. I'll tell you that right now. They kind of talk him up, but I especially last year in the playoff game with Houston, I thought he was awful. I think they're limited with Daboll, but that's why Allen needs to be able to take that next step. And he's, obviously a great athlete, and he does need, I think, to continue to do that. If this is going to be a dangerous offensive team, Allen has to bring that type of game, the running game, not like Lamar Jackson, but kind of like, Lamar Light, where you give a little added dimension to the offense that not many teams can do offensively, because we know Buffalo is going to have a very good defense.
They are going to have a good defense, but it's going to be the offense that's going to have to ignite this team. And I'm not a big Brian Daboll fan at all either here. I don't know if he's that guy, that offensive coordinator, but I'm going to throw this stat out in passing here that Sean McDermott has really struggled in his career against Super Bowl winning head coaches. When he's gone up against them, he's gone up against 12 of them in his career. He's won just one game. He's 1-11 straight up and 3-9 against the spread.
Wow.
So, yeah, so he's going to have to, he's going to have Bill Belichick twice on that list this particular football season here. So McDermott is going to have to do his part as well here and prepare his football team to win games that he hasn't been able to show that he can do in the past. He's got Andy Reid coming to town in the middle of October. That's going to be another big challenge for him as well.
Yeah, you better have the fans for that one.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin coming in with Pittsburgh. So, there's boxes that he's going to have to check off this year if he's going to want to win this division, which looks like it's his best chance to do this year. But they're going to have to prove it to make me a believer.
Yeah, and also it's a lot easier to take a team that is kind of borderline 500 team, get to the playoffs the next year, or be a serious playoff contender, and then be asked to take that next step to be a Super Bowl contender. That's a
Exactly.
huge step. I think they could do it, and again, especially they must get off to an early start because they have almost as good as an advantage as any team in the NFL, as we said at the very open, with everybody coming back from the front office, staff to players, that they must get off to a good start and take advantage of that. Buffalo, by the way, plus 145 to win the division, 11-1 to win the conference, and 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'm not sold on them as a Super Bowl team just yet. I'm not even sure I'm sold on them as an AFC Championship team. What do you think? Where are you right now with the Bills?
Well, I'm from the school of Missouri. You got to prove it to me here. This football season here, they did make the playoffs last year, and I don't know the last time they made back-to-back playoffs. You might have to go back to the Jim Kelly years to see just that. A lot more is expected from this football team, and sometimes when those expectations happen, they can be a little bit high on teams. And had the Cam Newton trade not happened, and they would have opened up as the favorite to win this division, I think that would have been their Waterloo, their undoing. Just knowing the fact that they're strutting around, knowing they're the team to
That's
beat in the
right. Yeah.
AFC.
Good point. Yeah.
That, yeah,
A
yeah.
little bit more
I think
pressure taken
Bill,
off of them.
exactly. Bill Belichick would have feasted on something like that. But they should be in the mix, if not for the division, for a wild card this particular football season. But let's see if Sean McDermott can step up in big games against big coaches.
And by the way, same thing. I got to go reverse with the Patriots. I think if you like the Bills, take them early. Take them before the season begins because, again, chances are they're going to be able to get off to a good start. Okay, let's go to the Dolphins. The Dolphins are 8-1 to win the division, 40-1 conference, 80-1 Super Bowl. We know they're not going to take advantage of conference and Super Bowl, and they're not yet ready to win the division either. Chan Gailey is the new offensive coordinator. It's an interesting move. Gailey hasn't been in football since he was with the Jets back in 2016. Coincidentally, when he was with the Jets, that year, the year prior, he's only with them for 2 years. The first year he was there is when Ryan Fitzpatrick had that big year with the Jets, and they very nearly went to the playoffs. Of course, he coached Fitzpatrick when he was the head coach of the Bills. So there is a little bit of continuity there that could help him out. But other than that, I still think it's kind of a strange move. Everybody's going after the young offensive coordinator, who's got all the new age ways to make our team exciting. And the Dolphins have decided to go back to old school on Chan Gailey. Brian Flores looks like he's got the chops to be a really good head coach. Chris Grier is 5th draft, but this might have been his best, including bringing Tua to the team. I really like what they did, of course, free agency. They added a lot of good players. Byron Jones was added to the team. Matter of fact, you have a combination of Brian Jones and Xavier Howard are 2 of the highest paid cornerbacks in the NFL right now. Kyle Van Noy comes from the Patriots. A couple other players come from the Patriots, one on defense to help out Brian Flores, because Flores knows these players from his days in New England. So I really like the draft. I like the moves they made in free agency. They're going to be a much better team. We're not going to see anything like we saw on opening day last year. But still, when Ryan Fitzpatrick is your quarterback, you're only going to go so far. Sooner or later, it's going to be time to turn it over to Tua, and I think that's going to happen at some point this season. I think a 500 team could be the very best you could accept for the Dolphins.
I think they take 500 right now, Greg. Here's a football team that's had 3 losing seasons in a row. Last year, they opened up 0-7 in the tank for Tua drive, and the players just didn't like that. They didn't like what they were reading in the paper, being accused of tanking for Tua, and they really stepped up. To their credit and to
Yep.
Brian Flores' credit, this football team did not dive or continue that dive. So, I think that's formidable, and I think it can work in their favor. I also agree with you. I like their complexion changes in the offseason here. They had a very strong draft, although I think their reach for Austin Jackson with the second pick in the first round was a little bit of a reach. I think he was more of a second or a third round player, but they have a need, and they drafted for that particular need. But they also got, by the way, I'm just run this name by you, Curtis Weaver. He was a defensive end that was
Yeah.
drafted in the 5th round, and he comes out of Boise State. And many drafts had him as a first-round talent. So, bottom line here is they had a lot of players that they acquired in the draft. They did really well. They did really well in the offseason in free agency. The owner went out and spent the money, as you mentioned, with Byron Jones. So they've got a whole new look and a whole new feel about them, do the Miami Dolphins. They're going to start off, as you mentioned, with Fitzpatrick at quarterback here because they have to let Tua break himself in. And I don't know if he's 100% healthy here or will be by the start of the football season here, but he's going to be under immense pressure once he does take the field for Miami. He's not a very big athletic quarterback. I mean, I'm not saying he's diminutive by any sense, but he's not a strapping quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand why the concern might be here for some injury with him. But the bottom line here is when he does take the field for Miami, the fans are going to be geeked up. He's been nothing but a winner in his career. I think he's only lost 2 games at Alabama in his career. So I'd look for better things from Miami this football season here. Will they challenge in this division? No, they won't challenge in the division. But as you say, if they end up with the 500 football season, it will be mission accomplished for the Dolphins this year.
And they're going to be very competitive too. I think they're going to rarely get blown out. I think when they do get blown out, it'll be one of those bad Ryan Fitzpatrick games. And I think we're probably going to start seeing that too, because Ryan is very predictable. Look what happened with the Jets. Big first year. What happened second year? Dud. I kind of think that's what we're going to get from Ryan Fitzpatrick this year. I think he's going to come back down to earth, and at some point, the decision will be made to move Tua into the starting lineup. But yeah, I think there's a lot. Look, there's optimism in Miami, no question, especially with Tua there, and there's good reason for optimism. So Dolphins are going to be a fun team to watch finally, because I don't think the Dolphins have been fun to watch since Dan Marino.
No, they haven't been fun to watch since Dan Marino, and everybody in Miami down here is constantly reminded about that. That's the reason that this Tua wave is going on right now, because they feel he might be a legitimate quarterback, which this franchise has needed in the longest time. Fitzpatrick he's just a placebo for the moment here right now. Yeah. Getting Tua ready, and I think he'll end up being a good mentor for Tua as well. He's a very astute quarterback, as you know. He's been around in the football game in this business, and he has this crazy habit of playing good in streaks and lousy shortly thereafter. So the question is, when does lousy happen in Miami? And that means that's when we'll see Tua.
All right, Jets also 8-1 like the Dolphins for the division, 50-1 conference, 90-1 Super Bowl. So just like Miami, none of those things are going to happen for the Jets. They won 7 games last year. So and after such a bad start, they didn't fall apart, which I think was a good sign. Especially in the first year with Gase. They had so many injuries. Of course, Darnold had the mono, and that just kicked off a lousy. I mean, it was just a bad timing all around. Not only did you have Darnold with mono, you had C.J. Mosley having a monster game week 1 against the Bills, and then he gets hurt, and he's out for the year, and then they lose the game to the Bills, and that was the story of the season for the Jets. And now it's time to see Sam Darnold stay healthy, even though, I'm sure every Jet fan is waiting for they're gonna wait until opening kickoff, 24 hours beforehand. They're gonna wake up on Sunday and turn the TV on, and they're gonna hope that they don't hear Sam Darnold has COVID.
Well, what you don't want to hear is Joe Flacco's behind center for the New York Jets.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because that would be just like the Jets.
To the chase, right.
To have Sam Darnold have mono last year and then COVID this year. So, but he has to stay healthy. because he's definitely showing that he has the ability to take that next step. A second year in the system is going to be very helpful. Greg Williams is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. The big question is going to be whether Jamal Adams is going to be there. The Jets are not trading Jamal Adams. I'd be shocked if that happened. So the question then becomes, how long does Jamal Adams hold out for?
Well, health will be a big concern for this football team, unquestionably. And I'm not a big Adam Gase fan, and I'll jump in here on the bandwagon real early and point out the fact that in his second year with Miami, they went backwards 3.5 games net in the win-loss column, so they can't afford to even think something like that. But what I do like about the Jets, what I saw last year, was the way after they were just completely outplayed on the football playing field the first half of the season here. But they won the yards in 5 of the last 9 football games. They became a football team last year, and they became a lot more competitive. And I think that was, that was with the maturity of Sam Darnold. And I think if he can stay healthy here, and like you say, God forbid COVID, but if he can stay healthy and we can keep Joe Flacco on the bench, I think the Jets got a chance to edge out the Miami Dolphins this year.
Yeah, they had basically they transformed their offensive line. So they draft Becton, and they must have Becton become a star at left tackle if the Jets are going to have success in the coming years. McGovern and was also brought in. Van Routen was brought in. They drafted another lineman in the 4th round. Fant from Seattle was taken in as for free agency. So the offensive line should be better, and it could be a lot better if Becton turns into a star. But again, you're talking about a rookie that's not going to be able to have the normal offseason. And with so many changes on the offensive line and not a lot of time to work together, that's going to be an issue potentially for the Jets. You have Le'Veon Bell in year 2. Hopefully, Chris Herndon, who was out last year, he looks like he was going to be a star until the injury. That's another big addition. They bring in Perryman for Anderson, and they also draft Denzel Mims in the 2nd round. And Jamison Crowder had a nice year last year.
Yeah, they're going to need Mims to be the real deal because they lose Robbie Anderson and Demaryius Thomas from last year. So that doesn't going to help Sam Darnold in that sense. So they're going to need him to step up and be a real viable target. If that happens, that can keep Sam Darnold on this pace of improvement here. I like Sam Darnold as a quarterback. I think there's a reason he took over that starting job at Southern Cal. The kid's I think he's got everything it takes to be a good quarterback in the National Football League. The question is, can he be coached up, and can you put enough talent around him? Overall, you take a look at their draft. I think they did a real good job in the draft this football season here. Becton, I think, was huge, picking him up where they did. There's a lot of people that thought he might go earlier than that, but the bottom line here is he's now going to be the bodyguard for Sam Darnold, if you will. I got to give him a good B+ on their draft this particular football season here. So if we can get Adam Gase to put a game plan together here to protect Sam Darnold, open up this offense a little bit here, because he's a very, very conservative coach offensively. You saw they gained only 273 yards a game last year. That's not going to cut it in the National Football League. In fact, if I told you they're going to average 273 yards this year and win 7 games, you'd say, I'll take it. That's exactly what happened with the team last year. So they're going to have to put up some yards to match for better production here, to have them have a chance to at least finish 500 on the season.
Yeah, there won't be any excuses if they stay healthy on offense. They need to make a big jump. Darnold has to make a big jump if everybody's healthy for Adam Gase to prove that he's worthy of being their head coach. And then defensively, Quinnen Williams needs to step up. He had the injury last year that he was dealing with. But maybe he's one of those players, too, that can make a big jump in year 2 because he's a very good talent. And if you could put a Quinnen Williams big jump, you keep C.J. Mosley healthy, and Jamal Adams hangs around. And the team was already a pretty good defensive team last year without Mosley and without Quinnen Williams' production. They could be even better. So I think there's reason for optimism for Jet fans. It's a matter now of getting to 500, battling for a wild card in the last month, and then getting to the playoffs in 2021.
Well, as you know, Joe Douglas built an offensive wall for Sam Darnold here, not only selecting Becton, but in the free agency as well. So he's fortified everything he can do for Sam Darnold here this year. If they can be effective, this football team can improve this football season here. But I think it's going to be nip and tug between Miami and the New York Jets this football
Yeah, it'll
season.
be two races: New England, Buffalo for first, and Miami, the Jets for third. And you don't want to be throwing your money away on the Dolphins or the Jets for any reason, at least early on, until maybe they start surprising us more than we think. But the Patriots and the Bills, those are the two teams to keep an eye on. And I think if we're going to close with our I guess my prediction or what I would do, like I said, I probably at this point in time I would wait on New England, maybe put a little bit on the Super Bowl early on, but wait after the first month. And then for the Bills, I might put a little bit of money on them early. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the Bills are the team that I think can get to the Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. But like I said, if you think you're a fan out there that thinks the Bills are a Super Bowl contender, then do it before the season begins.
Well, I'm gonna ride with New England to win this division here this year. From a betting standpoint, maybe not so much perhaps early on in the season, and I always do it game by game, depending upon how the flow or the pulse of this team goes and reacts. But through everything that happened last year, they were still a rock solid defense. This football team was. They only yard 276 yards a game last football season here. That's better than Buffalo, who's known for their defense here as well. So until it happens, you got to prove it to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm from Missouri. I got to make New England to win this division.
All right. Again, don't forget, you can order the draft guide, the review guide from ourlads.com, and also Mark Lawrence's Playbook magazine, the NFL Preview guide right here, playbook.com. And that's where they order it. If they are, because sometimes, especially nowadays, people don't want to go out. So order it online at playbook.com, right, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. And, we did sell out last year. All our newsstands sold out. We did too in our office. So, if you're jonesing for football, you're looking to get ready for the football season here, bone up and study up. Now is the
That's
time.
right.
Get them before the season starts at playbook.com.
All right, for Mark Lawrence, I'm Greg DePalma. Next week, we'll tackle the NFC East, and 7 more to go. And hopefully we'll get to that 8th team real fast so we can get some football going here, Mark. Thanks for stepping in here for week 1 of 8 straight as we previewed every division in the NFL before the 2020 season, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Greg. Enjoy it. We'll catch up on the NFC East next week. Have a great week.